Hello and welcome to episode 100 of the Confident at Work podcast. I'm your host and confidence coach, Anna Manning. And today we are talking, because it is a special episode, it's episode 100, about being proud. And I was coming home from a work event a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of those gorgeous London summer evenings where the sun's shimmering along the Thames and you're feeling happy about life. And I'd had a lovely time and I'd met this cute dog and I'd met all these nice people and I was on the way home to my apartment and I was on the train and I'd seen this beautiful view of the Thames and of Tower Bridge. And after that, as the train pulled out of the station, I was just leaning my head on the window and I heard this voice in my head say to me, "I'm so proud of the woman you've become." And it made me tear up a little bit because it was so nice to hear that. It's so nice when somebody tells us that they're proud of us. In, and it's an emotion that feels really nice for me. I'm guessing you're probably the same. And that was a big thing for me because not only is that lovely to hear, and that obviously makes you feel great, but if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you'll know that my relationship with myself wasn't always like that. Mainly the stuff that I would hear inside my head was criticism, harshness, beating down. That was the usual soundtrack that used to play in my head. And that soundtrack doesn't really play much, if at all, anymore because of this work that I've done and that I do. And to have that kind of automatically replaced with something else that said to me, "I'm so proud of the woman you've become," it makes me even a little bit teary to think about it now because what an amazing thing for somebody to say to you. And more amazing to me that it actually came from me rather than from anyone else. And I've been thinking about being proud. And I always want to know from my clients, like, what they want to acknowledge themselves for. And I'm kind of more subtly asking them, like, what are you proud of? What have you done on, and who are you? And what have you overcome? And what have you tried? And what have you dared to do? And what have you failed? And what are all of those things that you can actually be proud of if you call them to mind? Because there will be so many things that you can be proud of if you call them to mind. But most of the time we don't, do we? We don't just go around being proud of ourselves the whole time. We're just going around living our lives and doing our thing. But it is nice to stop for an occasional moment and say, "What are you proud of?" And say to yourself, "I'm proud of you." How great is that? And how motivating is that? And I want you to think about the things that you're proud of, as I'm going to tell you the things that I'm proud of as we go through this special number 100 episode about being proud. Because I know that for most of us, we want somebody else to be proud of us. And that's probably been from a young age. Maybe we wanted teachers to be proud of us. Maybe we wanted parents to be proud of us. Now, maybe in our lives, we want our boss to be proud of us, our team to be proud of us, our organization to be proud of us. Maybe we want our kids to be proud of us or our partner to be proud of us. We want that approval. And a lot of the time we may seek it from other people. This is especially part of the confidence work that I do with people. And it's especially a part of a low confidence cycle and can be a part of a high confidence cycle too, is that we're able to kind of stand in our own knowing about who we are and what we can do and our expertise, and therefore acknowledge ourselves and the work that we do and the things that we do. So we don't need to seek as much external approval. And of course, it's always nice to have external approval, and it's always going to be. But it's not always so readily available, I've found in my life. And I think my clients have found that in their lives too. So being proud and thinking about the things that you're proud of is one of those ways that you can stay within a high confidence cycle. Because isn't it nice to be boosted and to be motivated and to be inspired by hearing that someone's proud of you? And if you're anything like me, it makes you feel motivated and inspired and boosted when you tell you that you're proud of you too. So I want you to think about all the reasons that you're proud of yourself. And I'm going to challenge you to think of 10 things. List them off in your head, write them down, send them on a note to me, email me, whatever. I want to know what you're proud of. And I know there's this old thing, and we've probably been taught it, right? Pride comes before a fall. And there's a kind of pride which potentially does, right? It feels conceited and fake and like a puffing up. But I don't really think of being proud in this way. I think of it as like a heart swelling, like a recognition, like love rather than like arrogance. So I want you to think about reasons that you're proud of yourself and look for them on purpose, because guess what? When you start looking for things, you'll find them. Your brain is the most amazing, like heat-seeking missile for the answers that you ask it to give you. So if you're asking it, oh, what are all the ways in which I'm rubbish? It's going to tell you. But if you're saying, what are all the things that I could be proud of? It's going to tell you that too. So ask a good question and get a good answer. So I wanted to tell you 10 things that I was proud of, because I'm like, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to challenge myself to think about 10 things I'm proud of. So far, I've thought of 9. And maybe by the end of the episode, one will come to me, or maybe you can fill in the blank for me. And the first thing that I wanted to tell you that I'm proud of is getting to 100 episodes of the podcast. So maybe you just started listening today at episode 100, or maybe you've been here since episode 1. We started roughly 2 years ago as the Yes You Coaching podcast. We've had a name change to Confident at Work. We've had an artwork change. But essentially, the podcast is still the same as it was then. It's helping you to notice what are all the habits and the patterns and the behaviors that create low confidence at work, and trying to help you to think about how you can change them so that you can feel better. That's how I started out this podcast. I thought, I've got loads of things to share with people. I can babble on for hours. And here we are, 100 episodes later, still babbling on and still filled with ideas about things that I want to share with you and things that I want us to explore together. There was a bit of a funk that I had in the middle where I was like, I ain't got anything to say anymore. I can't do this. This is rubbish. And that was one of those work funks that we all get into. We don't expect everything to be great and motivating all the time, but we ride through those things if we want to. And I did want to. And I did want to keep sharing stuff with you. And I'm glad that I did 100 episodes on, because now I've got loads of things on my list of things to share with you for the next, let's say, 20 episodes. So I'm proud that I've got to 100 episodes of the podcast, because it hasn't been the easiest thing in the world, nor has it been the most hard thing I've ever done. But thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening, however you listen. Thank you for taking me in your car. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Thank you for sharing me with people, because I know people do. I can see the stats about the podcast and where it gets shared. So that's pretty cool. So I'm pretty proud of 100 episodes of the podcast. Number 2 might sound like a weird one, but I'm going there. I'm proud of myself for getting divorced. And getting married is one of those things, isn't it, that we're taught in society. I think especially as women, it's like this peak, pinnacle thing that women are supposed to do, right? Somebody magically chooses us, we get married, blah, blah. We live happily ever after. And I don't know that I was that proud of that, just felt like something I was doing. But let me tell you that I am super proud of myself for getting divorced for many reasons. Probably because it was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was the hardest decision that I've ever made. And it was the hardest thing psychologically that I've ever gone through. And I knew it was going to be hard and bad for me, like the identity shift and everything that I knew would come in the wake of it did. And I'm lucky that I'm in a position where I have good friends, I have a solid supportive family, I have financial privilege, and all of those things were super helpful to me. But it still racked me, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And so I'm so proud of myself for doing it, because I knew it was what I should be doing. And maybe sometimes when we dare to do the thing that we know is going to be so bad, or it's going to be so hard, but we know in our bones that it's the thing that we should be doing, we can be so proud of ourselves when we come to the other side of those things. Number 3 that I'm so proud of is for creating those high and low confidence cycles. And you may know all about them. If you don't, there's a link in the show notes so you can go and check them out. But basically, the high and low confidence cycles are the things that I come back to in most podcast episodes, in all of the classes that I teach, in all of the work that I do, in the membership that I have, in the coaching that I do. They are the thing that I come back to again and again and again. They are the underpinnings of everything that I teach and everything that I want to share with you. And I'm sure that my work will evolve in the future, but I'm dead proud of myself for taking the time to look through hundreds of hours of coaching calls, literally hundreds, and for pulling out all of the themes and all of the patterns where if someone's confidence is lower, I was like, there's some stuff going on here. It's the same. It's not all different stuff that people have to overcome. It's some of the same stuff. And when I really started going through the data, I saw it was the same stuff over and over and over again. And so I pulled all that out and I put it into this thing that I call a low confidence cycle. And it's basically just a load of habits that you might unconsciously have adopted at work. And those habits create the culture that you work within. Not the external culture of your organization, but your own internal culture. And what I saw again and again is that confidence is won or lost based on your internal culture. And if you're stuck in a low confidence cycle because you unknowingly have all of those habits going on, you don't have a kind of culture where confidence can grow. But you can get it. If you can see the habits, if you can recognize them, if you can start to transform them, you can get into a higher confidence cycle. And with work and skills and techniques, you can stay there. And I'm proud of myself for creating that, because I could have just gone on, I'll just see this person, I'll just see that person, and we'll do the individual work and they'll feel better. But actually, it's good that I took the time to say, how am I actually going to use now what I know so that other people can feel better? People who never come to work with me, people who never pay me, who never sit with me, and instead listen to this podcast and take my free trainings and all the rest of it. So I'm proud of creating those high and low confidence cycles. And maybe one day they'll be in a book. Maybe when we get to the next 100 episodes of podcast, I'll be like, my book's a pain in the arse. Who knows? Number 4 thing that I'm proud of is having my own apartment. And my partner says that it's a flat. And when did I get so fancy that I call it an apartment? Well, I don't really know the answer to that. I'm sure it is a flat. And I actually bought this flat with my husband. It's in London. I live in London. And obviously we had an amount of financial privilege that allowed us to do that. And we also saved really hard. But the fact that I now own this apartment on my own as a single woman, I am proud of. And I'm partly proud of the women who've come before me, who reformed our society and our systems so that it was even possible for a woman to own property, because it didn't used to be possible in the UK for women to own property. Everything was owned by men. And it was even entailed via the male line, which meant that women could not inherit and did not inherit property. Not that normal women inherited much anyway, but you could not inherit. If you had some random cousin who was a male and 3 daughters, the random male cousin would inherit. It's terrible, isn't it? But the fact that I now own this apartment, obviously the bank kind of pretty much own it, right? But in theory, I own it. I'm proud of that because I know the work that I put in that's gone into it, and the care and the time that I take to make it look beautiful and for it to be something that welcomes me home and supports me and is just a lovely place for me to be. And yes, there's a lot of privilege involved in that for sure, but there's also some good stuff that I've done too, and good stuff that so many people have done before me, which has reformed our society and our laws and our systems such that a woman can own her own apartment and she is not just reliant on a man, which I think is pretty cool. Number 5 that I'm proud of for is being a school governor. So I've been a school governor for I don't know, it's like 7 years or 8 years or something. It's way longer than I thought it was going to be. And when I was first asked, I go to a church in Brixton, and the church has a school attached to it. And that school is in Angeltown, which is an estate in Brixton, which if you type it into the internet, you'll see all kinds of interesting things about Angeltown. And I used to live there when I first moved to London. So I went to this church and the school's attached to it. And they needed people to be governors. They didn't have people. They'd kept advertising, because of the demographic of the school, they don't have loads of people queuing up. People have got other things that they need to be getting on with. But I was asked to do it because I was a lawyer and they kind of thought, oh, she can read data and fill out forms and all that kind of thing. And I was like, no offense, but I don't really care about children's education. I know that sounds awful, but I'm like, I don't even know if I agree with schools. I think they're stupid. Anyway, my priest, Mother Rosemary, shout out to Mother Rosemary at the time. She's not there anymore. But she was like, I think you should go and pray about it, Anna. And I was like, oh, yeah, because I'm definitely going to say my prayers about it and then be told, yeah, I think you should just be selfish and not do it. Anyway, so obviously I had to say yes. I was strong-armed into it, guilted into it, you might say. And I was like, oh, God, what a waste of time. But it turned out to be such an amazing, rich, fulfilling experience. And it still is. So the kids, as you can imagine, are amazing. They're hilarious and they're amazing. And I've spent time in school over the years. Some of you lot have contributed. So we did a library fundraiser. They had 2 boxes of books that said library as a sign above the books. I was like, what the hell is this? So loads of you actually contributed thousands of pounds and funded a library. And now they have this beautiful library. It's got all these murals on the wall. There's all these gorgeous rugs and all these soft seatings for them to sit on. And the kids are like the library attendants. They check books in and out and they do these little book reviews and they stick them up. It's the coolest thing. And I am now, I think I'm the vice chair. Yeah, I'm the vice chair. And I also run the Curriculum and Standards Committee. And so, not my thing necessarily to look at a load of data and be like, what's happening here? What are we doing about this? But it's been such a rich experience and I'm proud of myself for sticking at it because turns out I was being a bit selfish. Education is extremely important. And especially for some kids for whom other things may throw them on the scrap heap when they definitely do not deserve to be there. Learners are incredibly smart. And for many of them, they have multiple things that they're trying to handle and manage as they go through their school lives. And I am proud to serve them and play a little part, my little part, only a very little part, I would say, in supporting them through school, which is a great place in that community. And also, there is an added benefit that I've learned about being on a board. And I used to work with boards in my last job, and I still work with people who are on boards now. And I never thought that it would be useful for my CV, quote unquote, to be a school governor. But it really is because it's like being on a board and you learn loads of things. So something good came out of that too, and I'm proud of that. My number 6 for the thing I'm proud of is the way I am now versus how I used to be before. And you go through life, don't you? And you learn certain things about the world and you think certain things about yourself and you find ways of coping and ways of being. And one of the ways that I'd found of coping was to create this kind of hard shell on the outside. I am a very softy person, but I'd created this quite hard shell, this quite hard exterior. And I thought that was a good way for me of, being in the world and protecting myself and all the rest of it. But it really wasn't, because it led to me leading some sort of grey half-life, which wasn't really real. And I could never really show people me. And it was okay, but it wasn't great. And I've worked really hard over the last few years to transform that. And I think I have transformed it. So now I feel like I'm stronger on the inside and softer on the outside. And I made a commitment a few years ago that that's how I'm going to live my life now. I'm not going to harden up and pretend to be things that I'm not. And I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to be vulnerable sometimes. And sometimes I'm going to be a mess and I'm going to do things wrong and I'm going to be rubbish at some things and I'm going to be all right with that. I'm not going to expect perfection from myself or drive myself into the ground. I just think, no, ridiculous. I can be soft on the outside as the situation calls for it, right? You can't be all the time. But for the most part, I am now. And I'm always proud of myself when I manage to, I feel that toughness wanting to creep back in relationships, definitely. Sometimes it can want to creep back in when I'm hurt or when I'm finding things difficult and I can want to harden up, pretend that I don't care or it's fine. And every time I keep going and I keep being soft. I'm so proud of myself for doing that because it hasn't been easy for me to do. I know it's easy for some people to do that maybe, but it hasn't been easy for me. And so I'm proud of myself for doing that. Number 7, I'm proud of myself for embracing my spiritual life. So you might not know this because I don't really talk about it much, but I grew up Catholic. I always went to church. I went to Catholic school, and I loved, in part, my spiritual life, my religious life, and it has always been important to me. And years ago, I used to fear that if I ever went too far into it, because you kind of take on what your parents give you at the beginning and you're taught to question it all. And then I always thought, oh, I don't want to ask too many questions of it because then I'll lose it. And I was afraid of losing it because it's a part of my life that I cherish. And the people who know me know it's really important to me. It strengthens me and it helps me. I know not everybody needs that, but I definitely do. And so I kind of shied away from walking what I would say is my path, which is part of my life, is that I'm meant to embrace my spiritual life and spirituality and go forward with that. And in the last few years, again, I've really done that. And that has been tough sometimes too. But I know it's how I'm meant to be living and it's who I'm meant to be. And I've always known that, really. I've always known that was the truth. So it's good to embrace it and to accept it and say, okay, I know some people think it's weird. I know some people think probably that it's strange, but this is who I am. And that's how I'm going to live my life. And it feels good to say that and to walk that path, which I know I'm supposed to be on. And I wonder if for you, you've got things where other people might find them a bit odd or a bit strange, or you might think they're weird, but really inside your heart, you know that they're your path. You know that they're right for you. And yeah, that I would say that little prayer for you, that you're able to walk that path that you know you should be walking, because I don't think you want to get to the end of a life and think, well, I knew that was my path, but I didn't quite dare to walk it. Number 8 is, last year I did this thing I haven't talked about on the podcast yet, I don't think, called the surrender experiment. And this is kind of tied to the spiritual life stuff, but I read this book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And it's one of those things where, you know how somebody gives you a book and then years later somebody else recommends you a book and you think, wait a minute, that's the same book and I never read it. But the universe seems to be saying, I think you should read this book. But you keep getting the same nudge and you keep ignoring it. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to read it. And it was about this guy's decision to live his life a little bit differently. He noticed that he had this voice in his brain that had many, many preferences about everything. And that we're taught to kind of live our life in accordance with these preferences, work out what we want, go for it, make it happen, and all of that. And I had very much been of that camp, right? I'm a life coach. I help people create goals and go for them and decide what they want in their life and all of that. And I'd very much been, that had been very much my method and my way of living for a long time. But when I got this book about the surrender experiment, I was like, there has to be another way to live. And I'm not sure that I should be living my life in a way where I select all my goals and I bend the world according to my will and I try and make everything happen, because that way of living is kind of exhausting. It might be right for you or it might not, but it was kind of exhausting for me. And I just got to the point of thinking, I don't really want to live my life that way anymore. I'd like to live more surrendered life, which to me means I go with life. I see what's happening. I realize that I'm in the river and I'm flowing with it. I'm not trying to force and fight all the time, because I was just don't have the energy in me anymore. And I don't want to live like that. And I was doing a training for, it was a big London hospital and they have loads of coaches and mentors within their organization. And I was doing a training for them where I was helping them to think about how to help their clients set and achieve goals. Now, obviously, I'm something of an expert in this because this is what I do for my job. But the whole way through that training, I was thinking, please God, don't ask me if I've got any goals, because I haven't. I decided to do the surrender experiment where I just surrender all of that and I live my life differently. Thank God nobody did ask me that. And I'm only just telling you guys about it now. But yeah, it was a great training session, despite the fact that I was teaching them how to help their clients live in a way that I don't really live anymore. But I do help my clients in that way, in that I help them think about things that they want to be different, and I help them move towards that and change things. So I definitely haven't abandoned that altogether. But that surrender experiment was tough because it's quite countercultural. It's like, don't decide that you're going to be this and you're going to be that and you're going to achieve this and do that. It was like, let go of all of that. Realize that all of that is nonsense anyway, given that you're on a planet with a molten center spinning through a potentially infinite universe, and let life do its thing. Now, that's very countercultural for me, and especially in the work that I do. And I'm still living that surrender experiment now. I don't always get it right. I don't always find it easy. I find myself really easily dragged back into my old ways of thinking. But pretty proud of myself for attempting that surrender experiment and choosing to live life and do things a little bit differently, and still finding that I can do the work that I love to do with clients now. Which brings me to number 9. The things that I'm proud of is my clients. What an absolute load of belters. And if you're listening to this episode and you are a current client or a past client, what an absolute gem you are. I get off my calls and I'm like, what an absolute gem. I always think, I hope I've pressed stop on the Zoom so that people can't hear the stuff that I say about them afterwards. Even though it wouldn't be a bad thing, it's always a good thing. I'm like, what an absolute love. What an absolute belter. Where I'm like, oh God, I'm so proud of her. The work that I get to do with people means that I really get to see their insides. I get to see their heart. I get to see their insides of their brain. And I would challenge anyone to really see the inside of someone's heart, like the truth of who they are, and then not see what an absolute gem they are. It's very easy for me to see that in all of my clients because they bring me the truth and they lay it out on the table. And I just marvel at their level of courage and their level of care for the stuff that they do and just for who they are in the world. And I am proud of them all the time. And I guess I wouldn't necessarily say to somebody, oh, I'm proud of you, because sometimes, I don't know, maybe it sounds condescending or something, but I am all the time. For the stuff that they attempt, for the stuff that they change, for the stuff that they try, for the person that they become, for the ways in which they stick to their principles and work in the world in accordance with what they think is right. I'm so proud of them all the time. And if you're listening and you're a client or an old client, you're always a client in my mind. You know who you are. So I wondered if by the time I got to number 10, I would have a number 10. But I don't think I do. I think I end there on my clients. And I'm proud and privileged that I get to do the work that I do because it's pretty cool. So, yeah, that's what I'm proud of. I think I've probably blabbled on for long enough. I want you to think about what you're proud of too. Because really, this episode, it's not about me per se. It's about showing you that you will have many, many, many things that you can be proud of. And I think being proud is a lovely motivator. It certainly helps you to grow your confidence. And that proud doesn't just have to come from other people. It can come from you. And believe me when I say that when it does come from you, it's going to feel really sweet. So, thank you for being here to listen to episode 100 of the Confident at Work podcast. Here's to the next 100. And guess what? I'm getting a cake to celebrate episode 100. I see people doing launch parties for their podcast and all this. I never did any of that. I just got a microphone and got on with it. But now it's episode 100. I think it's worthy of a little celebration because I'm proud of myself for getting here. But I'm very aware that while going through all of this stuff that I'm proud of, it is not just me that has got me here. It is not just me that has meant that I've ended up doing 100 episodes of this podcast. I said that I was majorly proud of my clients and for all of the people who hire me because that's why I'm here. But I've also had great bosses in my life, in my corporate life. I've been so lucky. I've had amazing bosses. Caroline, Sarah, Anna, Amanda, Dominic, David. brilliant bosses, best bosses a girl could ask for. And I've also had a lot of help and support from other professionals. So, no surprises given that I'm a coach, that I've had a lot of coaches and a lot of coaching. It has taken a village to raise this Anna. So, at church, they will say, it takes a village to raise a child. And I'm like, it takes a village to raise me. And I think of all the coaches that I've had. I haven't done this on my own. I've done it with all of them in my ear and on my phone and supporting me, helping me to get my mind right and go again when I was in a slump and pick me up and believe in me and all of it. And that is what I do for people. But my, have they done that for me? So Jess, Karen, Stacey, James, Anne, Jamie, Sarah, Chelsea, Melissa. And that's just the ones that I've worked with one-on-one. There's loads of other people that I always look to for support and guidance and wisdom. So it takes a village, and it's certainly taken a village to raise this podcast. And that is all I have for you this week. If you want to come and join in with the work that I've got going on, do go and take the confidence assessment. That is like the front door into this house that we've built. That assessment is going to take you through, and it's going to help you to think about everything which you could inadvertently be doing that's getting in the way of your confidence. That confidence assessment is going to take what you learn on the podcast and personalize it for you so you can get some actual actionable steps that you can use. The link's in the show notes. Go and take it there. And I will see you next week. Bye.